With the Iowa Lottery's new Millionaire for Life game, you could win $1 million a year for life. That could make you My Dream Job is No Job Millionaire. Front row tickets to every show Millionaire. Hire a personal glam squad for you and your bestie Millionaire.
Yep, a little further.
Or just to never run out of your favorite pickles Millionaire. With Millionaire for Life from the Iowa Lottery,
And these.
you can change your life for life. Play today.
Woohoo!
Billy Currington and Kip Moore live in concert. Saturday, June 13th, Lauritsen Amphitheater. Billy Currington, Kip Moore, and Kenny Whitmire. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster. A part of the Willis Summer Series. Don't miss Billy and Kip live.
Chad Leistikow, Scott Dochterman, the two biggest Hawkeye and Big Ten beat writers, together on one show. Game Day Men's Health proudly presents Legends and Listeners. Best enjoyed with an easy Eddie from Big Grove Brewery. This is Legends and Listeners, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. It is Legends and Listeners on Iowa Everywhere, NFL Combine Week edition. As always, we are presented by Game Day Men's Health. This week, the Channel Seed Studios for the great Scott Dochterman of The Athletic have shifted to Indianapolis, where he joins us right now. I am Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, back home in Iowa after the Hawkeye men's basketball team delivered its 20th win of the season, Scott, 74-57 over bubble team Ohio State. First of all, welcome. And how about 20 wins, Scott? 20 wins for the first time since Keegan Murray's final year at Iowa, the Big Ten Tournament Championship team 4 years ago. Iowa's first 20-win season is clinched. How significant is that?
I think, first of all, it's great to see you, Chad. Hope you're doing well. I think it's significant because when you look at the way, you have a coaching change, you have complete roster turnover, all but one player who didn't play last year coming back to reach the 20-win plateau. Tells you you're going to be in the NCAA tournament, barring a collapse that really drops them out. But their net and their KenPom numbers are so strong that I think that they've earned that right to be in the NCAA tournament. And I think year one, it really shows not only progress but a standard. And if your standard is you throw all these guys together, a bunch of basically mid-major guys, and then one first-round lottery pick at point guard who was a mid-major guy and a D2 guy, then you've got something special going, not just this year, because this year is get to the tournament and see what happens. But the foundation is set for something special down the road. I've talked to some people with Ohio State today here, just on the side. And
sure.
And one comparison I thought that was I never thought of that I think was really cool. He's like, Iowa found its Jim Tressel, guy who, right there he is. And if that's the comparison, then good things are happening. And based on recruiting, based on the way they're playing, and that they're just scratching the surface of this system. And that, to me, is something to be really excited about.
Yeah, I want to start big picture before we get into some of the weeds of last night's win, which was very impressive. I mean, Ohio State came in here. The whole talk on the BTN broadcast was like, okay, Ohio State, big chance for a signature win. They got to get this one to get into to get in over the bubble and into the NCAA tournament. Yet, to me, Iowa really needed this win just as much because it, as you said, it basically clinches an NCAA tournament appearance. That'll be the first for the Hawkeyes in 3 years. Now, it would help, I think, ease any 1% chance of worries if they could beat Penn State on Saturday. Last place Penn State on Saturday. But yeah, they're 26 in the net right now. I mean, just very solidly in the field, kind of projected in that 8 seed range for the tournament. But yeah, big picture, it just feels like, this is a season that, you wouldn't just stare at the basketball court and say, yep, that looks like a definite NCAA tournament team. But the way McCollum and Sturts have kind of set the groundwork, as you just said, for this team to grind out important victories. They may not have always been pretty, but here they are, 20-8 overall. That's a pretty good record, 20-8 overall. And you think about so many close calls too along the way, and 10-7 in the Big Ten. Scott, they've got now a 99% chance based on advanced metrics to finish 9th or better in the Big Ten. And that's an upper half finish in the Big Ten Conference in Ben McCollum's first year. And this was a program last year that had to win its final game to get into the Big Ten tournament as the number 15 seed. So it just kind of goes to show that this program has taken a step forward. It was the right move to make a change. And, not that we didn't know this, but it feels like the Ben McCollum era has been validated with all these checkpoints.
Of course. I mean, Fran wasn't able to get this kind of a season done in 4 years. And, when they won the tournament, Big Ten tournament 4 years ago, I mean, it was great for Iowa, no question about it. But they had to win 4 games in 4 days. It wasn't like they were they waited till Friday and they were a high seed. And they'd only advanced to Saturday twice in the Big Ten tournament under Fran McCaffery. They faltered all the time when it came to the Big Ten tournament. So I think being able to have 20 wins, first of all, it validates that this is the right move. I mean, to beat Nebraska, a top 10 team at home, I think that was also a really critical moment. We talked about it a lot last week. But I think almost as important is beating Ohio State, who is a bubble team, as you said. They have a great scorer in Bruce Thornton, one of the best in the country. They have a team that's desperate, the team that blew out Wisconsin, who just beat Iowa decisively. So there were this, and then to top it off, the game itself. I was joking with you that for about the first 5 to 8, 10 minutes of the game or so, I was out last night in Indianapolis, and I was checking Twitter, and it was like 14-2, and it was like, oh boy, this is going to get rough, and the doom and gloom on the Twitter. And then by the time I got back to the hotel room, just to kind of get back in, I look and Iowa's up like 7 or 8, and I'm like, what happened here? And it was a completely different reversal. And I think that also shows that players are bought in, they're sticking with the process, they're moving forward under what Ben McCollum wants them to do, and here they are. If they can win against Penn State, then from a tournament perspective, they don't need to do anything else. I mean, Michigan is going to be a very difficult game. I mean, let's not pretend. At Nebraska will be a very challenging game. And then the Big Ten tournament will be challenging because you'll face a team. It could be Ohio State again. It could be Indiana. It could be USC, which are all in the same ballpark. And some of them may be very desperate. So, but beating Penn State would just okay, no worries. Go play out the rest of the season.
Yeah, and a couple storylines from last night to me that kind of accentuated sort of the potential for this team. It's not like they're just. It didn't feel like last night this is just they got in, okay, celebrate. It feels like with Alvaro Folgueras, especially when he is unlocked like he was last night, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. He was a difference maker on defense. There's the Aiden showing the one-handed dunk there in the lane. When he is on, and this was the most on we've seen him, this team is very, very dangerous. He was his previous best game in the Big Ten was at Washington, and we remember that was a big win out there. The Hawkeyes were getting kind of torched by the Huskies in that game, and yet Iowa had enough offense to keep up and overpower the Huskies and win that crucial, what turned out to be a quad 1 win. And that was partially because Folgueras was on. And when Folgueras is on, this team is completely different, because then it feels like you've got somebody besides Sturts that you can rely on. And then when Folgueras is on, Cam Manyow scores 12 points because now he takes pressure off of him. And when those guys are all on, Cale Combs, who has been an eyesore of late, can stay on the floor, and he can give you a defense against Bruce Thornton. And you've got like all the necessary pieces you need for a team performance that we saw last night.
That's kind of been my point all year long, is he frustrates me. He has all year, because you could see the skill set and how it could translate when he's playing at a high level. And he is, at 6'10", 6'11", he's got, the stretch four capabilities, pick and pop, Euro type transition game, to also being a pretty good defender. And if he can put games like that together, it doesn't have to be 20 points, but somewhere between, north of 14, this team is completely different. It spaces the floor differently, because what I think we've seen that's made it, especially in their losses, but even in some other games, that becomes a grind, is that everything is relying upon how good Bennett Sturtz is. And and so sometimes he has to take tough shots just because nobody else can get their own. If Fulgaris can get his own and score, it changes every aspect of their offensive sets, and then it allows other people to open up. That is critical for this team moving forward. If this can continue, we'll know. Again, this week, Penn State has nice offense, not much on the defensive end of things, so it could be another opportunity for Iowa to really get its offense in gear. And then you've got two pretty difficult opponents to finish the season. But Fulgaris was, to me, a difference maker, and probably the reason why they were able to make the comeback, and then from there, obviously, blow out Ohio State towards the end.
Yeah, and it just feels like Bennett Sturtz understood everything that was at stake last night. I know you missed some of the early portion of the game, Scott, but he did not take a shot. I think it was almost 9 minutes into the game until he took his first shot. And he was trying to get other people involved. He knows that the only way Iowa's going to make any kind of postseason run is if it's more than him. And he was very deferential last night. He ended up with basically the most perfect Bennett Sturtz stats line that he could want. He was 8 of 11 from the floor, like extremely efficient. He was 3 of 6 from 3, so that means he was 5 of 5 from 2. Perfect from the line, 22 points, 3 assists, 2 steals, no turnovers, and everybody else got involved. I mean, Tavion Banks was in double figures. This is a guy that completely understood what was needed last night. He stepped it up when he had to, when Iowa needed a bucket, which was, and kind of just Ohio State made a little run. Okay, makes a 3-pointer early in the second half. He just does everything you need. And so that, in that sense, it makes me feel like, oh God, what are they going to do next year? But at the same time, this is the foundation that you have to establish. And man, how are we going to look back on Bennett Sturtz? I mean, this has just been, it's too bad it's just 1 year, but man, I mean, what he's done for this program this year, what he's done look, he's gotten Iowa in the NCAA tournament. He's won almost every single game for Iowa this year, like almost all of them. He has single-handedly carried the team to victory. 36 against Northwestern, the winning free throws against USC, goes and scores 27 in Bloomington. He's just been countless times he's carried the way, and now finally last night it felt like he could rely on some other people, and that's where I'm again optimistic about what's ahead.
When you look at the 3 team sports that matter the most at Iowa right now, Chad, and you look at over the last year-ish of who they've gotten out of the transfer portal, and the things that stand out are they had 3 major leaders: Lucy Olson last year, Mark Gronowski in the fall with football, and now Bennett Sturtz in men's basketball. They all carry some of the same intangibles, which is so important, which is they're hardcore winners. They've got their great chemistry with their teammates. They involve people around them and they're fun to be around. And then you throw on the special skills that each one of them have and how they were able to deliver their teams, not to championship seasons, but to really quality seasons that wouldn't be there if they weren't there. I mean, you had Iowa football by the end of the year. It's pretty much universal that they're the best 4-loss team in the country, that this was a team that was ascending all the way through the final months of the season. You look at Lucy Olson in last year, just such a rough middle, but then single-handedly taking Iowa, to the NCAA tournament, but also, from a place where you're wondering, man, they could be missing the NIT to getting to the tournament. And then now with Bennett Sturtz, who probably has the biggest impact of the three in my eyes, because he's one of the best 10 players in the country to me. And I think he's a lottery pick coming up. And what he does and how he engineers victory, and then his scoring ability, to me, is really unmatched. I mean, we like to compare players from different eras here because we're old dudes and we've been around this for a while. But there's 3 point guards in our lifetime, our viewing lifetime of Iowa athletics, Chad, that I think stand out as really great players, and he's certainly on that list now as a fourth. And I would say Andre Woolridge and B.J. Armstrong and Ronnie Lester. And I would say his game is probably more comparable to Ronnie Lester's than the other two, because B.J. was such a good distributor and scorer, but primarily distributor. And Andre was more of a scorer who led the league in assists. But I think Sturtz is really the engine to this team. And if you want to put who's the most valuable player in Big Ten basketball, most valuable to their team, no question to me, it's Bennett Sturtz.
Yeah, no question. I wrote a column last week about whether he should be considered for Big Ten Player of the Year. Talked to some people kind of behind the scenes, and even McCullum says, yeah, you probably still got to be among one of those top 3-4 teams to win it, and that's been true over the course of history. However, this year is a little bit more wide open because Michigan, the clear top team, has incredible balance. It'd be hard to pick one play. I mean, they have one guy that's a little bit better than everyone else, but it's a total team. So it's kind of a mix of about 5 guys that have a chance, including Braden Smith, Keaton Wagler, Jeremy Fears, Bennett Sturtz in the mix. But you're right. So I think he should be considered for the reasons we just said. I mean, he's literally taken Iowa from where it was last year to the NCAA tournament with the biggest disparity in the Big Ten between his scoring ability and anyone else's on his team, except for Northwestern, which is near the bottom of the league. So that's hard to do. Another topic I want to hit with you here, Scott, is does Iowa have to change the starting lineup? I know they just won a game, but it's become an increasingly flashpoint discussion because they're getting off to such slow starts. They even got off to a slow start in the second half last night as well. Is it time to put Fulgaris into the starting lineup, either for Maniau or Koch?
I think in some ways I would say that you probably should. You should identify what works and what doesn't work. And when you're starting off so slow at the beginning of games, and we've seen that, and it's not just the scoring disparity that we saw last night or the lack of points. It's also the way the engine runs. And I don't see the engine running quite as clearly as it needs to. Now, sometimes coaches like a player like Fulgaris to come off the bench and provide instant offense and get your team in there. But I think when you're getting into this part of the season, you've got to figure out what makes it work. And I mean, either Koch or Banks would be fine to me coming off the bench. Maniau, I kind of like keeping him in there because I think he's that physical presence that in the Big Ten you need just to start the game off because Iowa doesn't have a true center, and I think that would be a smart move to still keep him in there. But it's Cale Combs, a guy who last night he was a little more efficient, but has struggled for the most part. Is he a guy that you take out and go a little bit heavier on the front court? I think all those things should be up for discussion. Because now you've got a week and a half left of the regular season, the Big Ten tournament, and the NCAA tournament. Their season is down to potential for 5 games left in the whole season. So I think but I'll also say this, that, maybe I'm old now, but with Ben McCollum knows more basketball than I will ever know. And if he knows his team, and he's changed lineups before, so I guess I would say I trust him to make the right decision. But I also think we have the right to analyze and critique if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think we said that last week on the show too. It's like I'm at the point now where I kind of trust whatever McCollum's read on the situation is. But I think it's a fair question, and I know McCollum has a Zoom tomorrow, so maybe I'll ask him. Cooper Koch is in a rut right now. He's 8 for 35 from 3 in his last 6 games. He played 40 minutes at Wisconsin, all 40, had no rebounds. It feels like he's struggling with his confidence just a little bit. Could it be a situation where maybe you bring him off the bench, try to make him, just give him a little bit different mindset as far as impacting the game? Because it feels like because his shot just is not on right now, has consistently been off now for a little while, that you just all of a sudden you don't have a lot of scorers out there, because Maniau's not a natural scorer. Combs definitely is not. And if Koch isn't hitting, all you got left is Sturts and Banks to start the game. But it seemed like McCollum found, a little bit of something playing Maniau and Fulgaris together last night. And with Trevin Urach, who's given you a few nice minutes now, can give you some more size off the bench. It seems like he's very capable in doing that. It feels like Iowa has become more viable playing a little bit bigger, and Fulgaris gives you a little more height, gives you a little more offense. I mean, I thought his defense was fantastic, and I feel like it opened things up for Maniau a little bit more. So that would be the change I would advocate for, but I'd like to hear McCollum's perspective on why my idea is dumb. Basically,
I don't think it's dumb, and I think he understands that everybody is watching the game too, and it is a sport. It's not like we're watching, how people invest their, mutual funds or something like that, and
yeah.
So when we see the ball goes in, you feel good. If it doesn't, and you turn it over or miss a lot of shots, then you got to do something different. And I don't think he's that stubborn. I think he's also basically a basketball savant. So, and it's always tough when you're dealing with a young player like Cooper Koch, who you see so much potential and has started all year long, and that he's got that opportunity to grow. If you bench him, sometimes that impacts that confidence, and you feel better about, let's leave him out there, and let him work through these issues. Kind of like a pitcher in some ways, where you're just not hitting, or you're a hitter, and baseball is always a good analogy for basketball to me, because it's a skill, not necessarily a physical part of things, and you can kind of work through things, and you get in slumps. But that said, you need to get to the point where you're starting strong. This week is aside, where they basically go to a cavern in Rice Jordan Center. There won't be anybody. There won't be everybody there, because they'll be over interviewing the coach, or the football coach, the quarterback, all 25 people. But the ball echoes like it's COVID season. Yeah. So but you want to make sure that, okay, if you're going to do it, that's a good time to do it. Flip the lineup, then go with have that ready for Michigan at home, for Nebraska on the road, Ohio State for first round of the tournament, or USC or somebody, and then what happens in the NCAA tournament, or second round against Michigan again.
Right. So, who knew you were such a big, you were the voice of Iowa State athletics, Scott? But that's been the revelation today, is that,
Oh.
Do you live in Ames, Iowa? That's what I'm hearing from the folks in Pennsylvania.
I'm living in Ames that I'm mad because Rocco Beck went to Penn State. There's like this. It's kind of like the movie Animal House, where you had the angel on one side and the devil on the other side, on a different topic, of course, that I won't. Right. But that's me kind of on social media. It's like, leave it alone, ignore it. They're stupid. They're trolls. They're just gonna get you in trouble. And then other ones are like, let's say the F word, And so I got to find the happy medium on some of this stuff. But yeah, it's ridiculous because, I try. My point, and I think anybody who saw this, and if you know what I'm referencing, is a reporter who covers Penn State is like, Rocco Beck, this isn't like Ames, Iowa. And there was like, I don't know, maybe 20 guys. Is that a fair number?
It didn't even look like that many to me. Yeah. Maybe like 17 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Just circled around Rocco Beck for interviews and to say, oh, this isn't Ames, Iowa. I'm like, give me a break. I mean, this is a February incoming quarterback finally gets interviewed story. It's not like Ames, Iowa and Iowa State is covered like Wyoming or Miami of Ohio. And I don't mean to be disparaging them, so if anybody's offended, I apologize, but just to see, it's like, ooh, big deal,
and they had a table. They had a table too.
I know, fancy, so, but, I mean, in Iowa State, there'd probably be 12 to 15 people covered. Maybe there would be more at Lincoln certainly more than there would be at Penn State, and Iowa that'd be comparable. But just to kind of the arrogance of trying to say that, you're not Ames anymore. Come on, don't be that arrogant. Don't be that stupid.
All right, we got that out of our system. I wanted to poke the bear a little bit with you there. Well, I do have people continue to come up to me all the time and ask about GameDay men's health, and every time someone does, I tell them time and time again that I know it sounds like I'm like reading a commercial, but it really, really has made a difference in my life. I know it has in your life, Scott. GameDay Men's Health is helping old dudes like us who are in our early 50s feel like we are in our 20s again. Testosterone replacement therapy, much like Iowa bringing Bennett Sturts in from Drake, is a true game changer. A weekly T-shot specifically and safely calibrated to your needs can help you feel better mentally and especially physically in everything that you do on and off the court. It's very easy to get connected with GameDay Men's Health. That's what I tell people too. Call them up and set up a private, no obligation, free consultation. It's completely private, completely secure at GameDay, or by visiting GameDayMen'sHealth.com. You can also just stop in one of the locations, Ankeny, West Des Moines, North Liberty, or even Naperville, Illinois. GameDay Men's Health has you covered. And feel free to tell them Chad and Scott from Legends and Listeners sent you. Were you able to get a to-go needle, Scott, this week before you hit the combine, or what's the plan?
We had a discussion, and I ended up doing it on Friday afternoon, as opposed to taking one with me for because I do it Monday morning, so it didn't really matter too much. So, but it's been great because coming here, our entire NFL team is here in Indianapolis. Our editors, all of our reporters, even a few other college editors and reporters too. So to come here and then everybody's commenting on this from me, which is a positive, that, oh, wow. And they ask me what I did. And I, wholeheartedly endorse GameDay Men's Health. Now, there might be a few that live in the Chicagoland area, but I do tell, I don't know if they would fly into North Liberty, to take shots every week, but I think that they would. They really understand that GameDay Men's Health has changed my life, and so something similar for them would behoove them.
One more thing, Scott. One more thing, Scott, on Iowa men's basketball. How high do you feel like the seeding? I mean, how high can Iowa get in terms of postseason seeding? Because right now they're kind of projected around that 8-9 range in the NCAA tournament. Got to beat Penn State this weekend, like you said. That would get them to 21 wins with basically 2 free spins to go. I think that's the perfect scenario. Then you go into next week, like completely pressure-free home finale, the Ben McCullum year one home finale. There won't be an NIT game at home. You don't host in the NCAA tournament. That's it next week. It'll be senior day. It'll be Bennett Sturtz's last game in Carver as the top team in the Big Ten comes to town next Thursday. And then you get to go to the Hornets' nest of Pinnacle Bank Arena next Sunday. I'm sure we'll preview both of those games on our show next week. But those are opportunities, though, Scott. Those are major opportunities to increase your seeding, mostly for the NCAA tournament, perhaps for the Big Ten tournament as well. But, I think it would be I don't think getting to like a 7 or even a 6 is totally out of the question if they can stack a few wins, maybe make a run of the Big Ten tournament. What do you think?
Chad, I think it all depends on how the rest of the regular season lines up. If you go by chalk, they beat Penn State and they lose the last 2, and then they're an 8 seed, and then maybe they win a game there and then lose to Michigan in round 1 in the tournament, and that puts them at 2 and 3 to finish. That's probably your 8th or 9th seed in the NCAA tournament. That's not really where you want to be. Because those matchups are just so incredibly difficult. Not like the 7-2s are that much easier, but they are. I think there's a more inconsistent type of seasons that the 2s have had versus the 1s. I mean, take Houston, for instance. A week and a half ago, we were wondering if they were the best team in the country, and then they, lose at Iowa State, lose to Arizona. And so there's an inconsistency there, and I think that's why you'd want to get in the 7 range. How would they get there? I think a couple things need to come in mind. One is that they need at least one win, and that start with Penn State as a win, and then you would want UCLA to go winless to finish the season, and that's at Minnesota, possible, not completely out of the realm of possibility. Home against Nebraska, that's going to be a really fun, challenging game, and then they finish at USC. They beat USC decisively, but that was at home, and it's a rivalry game. So, but I think you'd feel a lot better if you want to. If you were to upset Nebraska in the finale on the road, first you'd stick it to one of your rivals, and then you'd also be 2-1. Maybe you still are the 8-9 in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
But then you could work. But then that gives you enough juice to get to the 7 line, probably in the NCAA, which again is where you would want to be, because if you just take kind of the the AP rankings, for instance, in that range, you'd be playing a team like maybe Gonzaga or Florida, UConn, Houston, maybe Iowa State, in that realm. And again, I'm not suggesting that any of those games would be easy or they'd be favored. It would take the best game of the year to probably win one of them. But as we saw with playing the Cyclones in Ames, my home now, Ames. That was a really good competitive game, and I think that's a game that if I was playing at a neutral site, if they play well and things were close, you give yourself a chance to compete and possibly win. And whereas I think Arizona, Michigan in particular, those two would be really terrible matchups for Iowa. But they wouldn't be in with Michigan anyway at that point if they played them twice, so that would be a blessing in disguise, I suppose.
Yeah, so Iowa is currently the number 2 8 seed according to bracketmatrix.com. So there is, if you which just averages all the projections basically. And pretty much they're either a 7 or an 8 across the board. So yeah, I think if they could win against Penn State, they'll be favored by about 9 probably. That's what Ken Palm has right now. To do that, it's their last place in the Big Ten, but they have given some opponents, some quality opponents, good games at home for some reason. That place makes you play weird. I mean, it is. We've both covered games there. It's just it's an unusual feel. It's kind of like when the Iowa women's team now plays like in an empty arena. It's just like, okay, yeah, this feels weird. And so we'll see what happens. But I think, if they could somehow steal one next week, I think they'd I think that would move them into that 7 range going into the Big Ten tournament. We have a new sponsor on Legends and Listeners, and it is time for a new segment on Legends and Listeners called Under Pressure, presented by Mighty M. When you're under pressure, you need equipment built to handle it. That is Mighty M. From pressure washers to air compressors, generators, and compressor generator combos, Mighty M, a quality company based in Peosta, Iowa, builds equipment designed to perform when the pressure is on. Proudly made in Iowa and proudly employee-owned for 55 years, Mighty M is an industry leader in pressure washers and industrial cleaning equipment that are built for durability, reliability, and performance. To learn more about Mighty M or to find a dealer near you, visit MITM. So it's so it's MI-T-M is the company name, but it's MITM.com/Iowa Everywhere. So go find them that way, and then that way people know you heard about them on Iowa Everywhere. So Scott, this is our segment, and I know you're busy with the combine, so I made the pick this week, and my person/team under pressure is Indiana head coach Darren DeVries. This is a name we talked about a lot on last year's Legends and Listeners as we wondered who would be Iowa's potential successor to Fran McCaffrey. And the former Drake coach is scuffling a bit with the Hoosiers. They started 12-3, but now, Scott, this past game on Tuesday, they lost at home to Chris Collins in Northwestern, a quad 3 loss that dropped Indiana to 17-11 overall, 8-9 in the Big Ten Conference. That's 3 losses in a row for DeVries. And now, Scott, Indiana hosts, guess who? Tom Izzo and Michigan State on Sunday on CBS at Assembly Hall. What a monster game that's going to be for Darren DeVries. Talk about a pressure environment at home. The Hoosiers host Minnesota and finish at Ohio State after that. They probably need to win 2 of these final 3 to safely get into the NCAA tournament. And so, man, that's a lot of pressure. That's more pressure that Darren DeVries is facing right now than Ben McCollum. Feels like McCollum has surpassed DeVries year 1, if you're comparing the 2 former Drake coaches.
There's no question. I mean, he won the head-to-head matchup. They're in the tournament. Indiana is not at this point. So they both play Purdue twice. So it's not like, there was some different kind of crazy schedule, and Iowa still has to play Nebraska. He's had, year 1, his season is just like what Iowa's faced, basically. And, they had a new team. He brought in a new team. I like what he's going to do. But, yes, it is a pressure situation because the pressure is, despite having a national championship in college football, which I still don't, it's still kind of unfathomable to some extent. But they are still huge when it comes to college basketball, and it builds up a lot of pressure there. Even as much as they got screwed the other day on a 3-point attempt from Tucker DeVries, who got smacked on the arm, and somehow the officiating crew didn't see it. I don't know how that happened. That would have been a fun game to see if that happened to Fran. What would have happened there? But Chad, if you are Darren DeVries and you're back in your home area in Applington, Iowa, and then you decide, I'm going to go down to Iowa City, and you're really pressured, and you got a problem because you're really pressured inside, call up Acriman Plumbing. It's time to discover just how the plumbing industry can be when you choose a customer-first, independently owned and operated business like Acriman Plumbing. It services the Iowa City area, and we're thankful for their support here in Iowa Everywhere's Legends and Listeners and Instant Iowa. It's available only in the Iowa City area. So, and in the residential plumbing business, your calls matter and will be answered in a timely manner. Whether it's for a plumbing emergency, you're backed up and then unleashed, routine service, maintenance, equipment replacement, or upgrades like tankless water heaters or water filtration systems, call Acriman. Shout out to the Acriman team of Corey, Stacy, Aaron, and Nathan. Visit acriman-plumbing.com for 5-star residential plumbing services in the Iowa City region.
Sounded like you said presidential plumbing business, so maybe you got State of the Union on your mind, Scott. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of big wins, let's dig into the Iowa women's team right now. They're coming off their biggest win of the season on Sunday, 62-44 over the 5th-ranked Wolverines. Man, oh man, what an atmosphere that was in Carver. There were about 10,000 last night for the men's game. This was the full 15, Scott. It was raucous the whole time. And this was one of those wins, Scott, where it just felt like Carver Hawkeye made a difference. And I put this in one of my articles this week, which is 4 of the last 5 senior days for Iowa. It's hard to believe this, that the circumstances would even allow it. But 4 of the last 5 senior days for the Iowa women, they have hosted a top 5 team in the country and beat them. Michigan in Caitlin Clark's sophomore year, which was the first sellout, I believe, since the Ohio State game way back when. And that obviously triggered what was to come. The following year, of course, Caitlin Clark's buzzer beater, where she's jumping on tables over in number 2 Indiana. And then, of course, 2 years ago when Molly Davis goes down with an injury early in that game, they carry her off the floor and Iowa beats 2nd-ranked Ohio State. And now they've done it again. Wow, Ava Hayden, what a story she has been, averaging well over 17 points a game now. She just completely took over the 4th quarter. And man, this is a fun team right now, Scott. They are projected, believe it or not, they were not picked top 5 in the Big Ten this year. This was yet another rebuilding year for Jensen on the outside, but they are now projected as a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament going into the final 2 games of the regular season.
Yeah, I think that's, again, such an amazing accomplishment. And last year we were discussing it mid-season, and a lot of fans thought that there was some buyer's remorse over who was that Jan got the job. And even this year, when they had that 3-game losing streak, there was a lot of too much knee-jerk reactions, I think, that people seem to forget that every team hits these skids at some point. But the way that they've regathered themselves after the Taylor McCabe injury, because that was significant, not just because of the points that she provided. It's because everybody marked her when she got on the floor, and it opened up the spacing on the floor, which allowed more interior work from Ava Hayden and Hannah Stolke, and allowed everybody to flow a little bit easier. When you remove that, it crunched everything up. It was a lot of pressure. There was some congestion. Now they've figured out how to play through that, and Ava Hayden had one of the great weeks we've seen, from a post player in Iowa history. I mean, it was a Megan Gustafson kind of week.
It was,
and it was really impressive. And the game against Michigan, to have the performance that they had was, really kind of incredible, and I think just as incredible was some voter voting them 18th, in the poll.
I saw that.
I'm like, what are you doing? That gives everybody a bad name. I mean, it's one thing to vote them 12th, it's one thing to vote them 11th, but to vote them 18th, you just kind of skewed the poll for your own.
And they had
bias.
Michigan 4th. They had Michigan 4th.
Right. They lose by, head to head. They're tied with the same record in the Big Ten at 2nd, and win by 18, and you're ranking them 18th and the other team 4th. They got the same record in the Big Ten. Come on. You don't deserve your vote. And I know it's a hard job because I know you voted, didn't you? Basketball? I know you did for football. But
I did. I did basketball for several years. Yep. It is tough.
That is as tough as it gets, and everybody makes either mistakes or you just make decisions that aren't quite popular, but that's stupid. I mean, let's call it what it is, stupid. I mean, what are you doing? Anyway,
yeah.
Rant number 2 today.
We love Scott Dochterman rants here on Legends and Listeners. I think the most important move was putting Taylor Stremlo into the starting lineup again. And it's not that it was the wrong move to put Addy Deal there for 3 games. It was actually the right move because Deal came off the bench against Ohio State, scored 20 points. That's the type of performance you want to build on. You want to build confidence in your freshman 5-star, and you want to ride that. And Taylor Stremlo is the ultimate, as I've said, she's like Kate Martin. She's the ultimate team player, and she would have been just fine coming off the bench the rest of the season and Addy Deal starting, 100%. But it just didn't work out. Deal had 3 tough games, and what they found that they needed with the loss of Taylor McCabe was they needed that voice on the court. They needed that glue piece, for lack of a better term. Chit Chat Right, very quiet personality, despite her nickname. Ava Hayden, pretty soft-spoken leader. Hannah Stolke, we know that's the case with her. She's doing, she's leading by example more so. She's doing better this year with the voice. But you put all that together. Kylie Feuerbach's a great leader and captain too, but she's also on the defense, more defensive minded. So, who gets you settled? That's been Taylor Stremlo. 4 games in a row. She started all 4. They've won all 4. And now we're seeing it bubble over to other players, Scott. I know you weren't at the game Sunday, but hopefully you saw the clips of Ava Hayden on national TV getting a little explicit. She was fired up the other day, and so this team's getting a little bit of personality, a little bit of swagger, and you just feel like they are building now. It doesn't feel like it feels like they're just building to next year, and we're almost to the point now where anything else that happens this season is great. Almost. Yeah. I know some fans won't feel that way, but if they can win these 2 games this week, they'd be the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And hey, Caitlin Clark's teams never were above 2 either, and those teams didn't have UCLA in the Big Ten. Yeah. So, right now, Iowa will have cleared every non-California team or non-UCLA team in the Big Ten.
Yeah. It's become a very good season because, again, when they had their 3-game losing streak and they went out to California and they didn't play very well against USC, who went on a pretty nice winning streak, by the way, after that. They had talent. They have a great young player in Jazzy Davidson. And sometimes you just catch teams on bad days like that, especially on the road. UCLA is the best team in the conference and one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. There's no, there is a separation there. And then coming back and playing Minnesota, I think Minnesota is the most underrated team in the league. And Minnesota also was highly motivated and shot better than it ever has before that day. Those games don't usually happen. But I think it's also a teachable moment. You don't like to lose to rivals like that, and they got smoked by a rival like that at home, and it helped them. And now they're in a position to really have a statement type of end to the season. And if they were to finish 15-3, that is a heck of a season in the Big Ten. A lot of years that would win you the Big Ten, and now it won't, but it'll get you in that position. And so, Chad, it's the kind of season where I think everybody needs to relax, have the favorite beverage, a non-alcoholic. I was telling one of my best friends who works for The Athletic, Josh Kendall, who covers the Atlanta Falcons, and he was looking for an NA at High Velocity last night. And I told him all about The Athletic and how great it was and how you vouch for it. And he's like, really? And I go, yeah, it's just like our name, The Athletic. So it's Athletic Brewing Company. So why don't you tell everybody what you're drinking right now?
Well, today I have an Atletica from America's largest dedicated non-alcoholic brewer. The Atletica is a refreshingly bright take on a Mexican-style copper. using the finest Munich. You're a German guy, right, Scott? Munich malts, a medium body brew that is big in flavor. It is the epitome of easy drinking. It's going down easy on this Thursday. And yes, I can have a beer before I cover the Iowa women's game tonight because it is non-alcoholic. It's also great for your taco nights. Athletic Brewing Company is America's largest dedicated non-alcoholic brewer and a proud sponsor of Legends and Listeners. Athletic Brewing, fit for all times. As I said, all times. Visit them for a wide variety of products at athleticbrewing.com. It's going down good today. Man, must be fired up for this game tonight. Go ahead.
It must be. You know what would be going down good for me would be a 1939 from Big Grove Brewery in Iowa, and I think one of the things that I would like to highlight this week is they've now got 1939 on tap. And who doesn't love a good amber, especially the way Amber Glenn performed at the Olympics, winning a gold medal in ice pairs. And so nothing goes down better than a 1939, and especially in the Iowa City area. But there's also, you've got Solon, you've got Des Moines, you've got Cedar Rapids right there on the river, right next to Pickle Palace. And you also have, Kansas City is getting a big grove. Omaha is getting a big grove. So it's a growing business. We love growing businesses here on Iowa Everywhere. And then if you're not into the ambers like I am, there's always the OG, and then there's always the neighborhood beer. And that's it's more of a Pilsner. It's an American lager. It's year round. And then it proceeds from each of these cases reinvested into Big Grove for Good Foundation. So, and then of course, who wouldn't like an Easy Eddie? It's their signature beer. So head over to Big Grove and enjoy dinner. Drink a 1939 on tap while you watch some of these games, or get ready for March Madness. Or if you're like me, pick one up at your favorite market and sit at home, hopefully on the deck pretty soon, Chad, and have a 1939.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the 60s tomorrow. I'm planning to smoke some salmon, I think. Iowa women host Illinois tonight, 8 o'clock BTN. Aaliyah Guyton coming back to town. So should be a really fun matchup. Illinois has been pretty good, so it's not gonna be easy. Hawks are favored by 11.5, though. Gotta see how they perform coming off that emotional win. Scott, I do want to talk to you before we go about two things on the Big Ten side, and that would be the finances. You wrote this. You don't cover Iowa State, I guess, full time anymore. I'm just kidding. You're right.
Oh,
you wrote a Big Ten finances feature. Penn State listeners out there, why don't you tell the folks kind of some of the top takeaways, because this is kind of the time of the year where we get those financial reports. We see how the bottom lines are doing across the Big Ten, of course. Private schools notwithstanding, Northwestern and USC private schools. But what were some of your top takeaways, Scott, and we can discuss?
Well, this fiscal year, I've gotten all 16 of the public schools in the Big Ten, their financial statements. Went through them because it's the first year that they were all in the league. And it was successful in that the totals were good. However, there is a growing disparity among the schools in the Big Ten. I mean, Ohio State with 2 extra home games, and then, of course, sharpened by its college football playoff title, ended up growing $81 million. It went to $336 million for the 25 fiscal year, which is significant increase. And then it was $60 million more than Michigan, which also grew significantly. So, and then Penn State and Nebraska were 3 and 4. Both were in really good shape financially. Now, the bottom is falling out on the bottom, on a lot of these financial issues. Maryland, Rutgers, and UCLA are all in rough shape. I mean, Maryland lost money year over year, which rarely happens, especially when you get that significant amount of a bump from media sources. I mean, they lost almost $4 million and reported just $124 million, which is like 50 less than Iowa, and 200 plus less than Ohio State. And, and one number is that really stands out for Maryland is it generated not even $22 million from ticket sales and contributions combined. That is horrific. I mean, when you talk about every other school, like Iowa generates about 24 million from ticket sales.
Yeah.
And then another 30 or so from contributions, depending on the project that's going on. For them to have 21.6 million combined in that area, I compared it and I had to rewrite it because I love the lead comparison, which was the EU and the Big Ten, because it's like you have financial heavyweights on one side and you have teams, schools and countries that are just depleting money left and right. That's kind of where we're at with this, but but then even the predicament Maryland is in is not the same as Rutgers. Rutgers, since it joined the Big Ten, counting its losses and the money it receives from the school, the state, and student fees, is up to nearly $519 million over that period of losses.
What on earth?
Their losses over the last 2 years have been almost $90 million combined. And Greg Schiano and the coaching staff is number 4 in coaching salaries in football.
Is he really? Wow.
That's just, again, I think he's an outstanding coach and I think he's really good for them. But, is he, if you're winning 5 games, how much better is that than going 1-11, if you're losing all this money? So they have that. In UCLA, the school kind of accepts the losses that it has, but over the past 6 years, it's reported more than $222 million in losses. So it's just this astronomical difference and disparity between the top and the bottom, which is why there's such a pressure for California investments to come through to kind of help everybody. But the schools at the top, now Ohio State was for it. Michigan was not, obviously. And because they're looking at it as like a payday loan and we already got enough bank, whereas these other ones really need that support. But, I'd also say that Maryland, Rutgers, UCLA still haven't been in the league so long that do they really deserve that kind of a payout? If it's, now Iowa wants it too, but, but not as strictly as the others. And then one other bad one, I'll say, it relates to the Terrapins, that they made $5 million in football ticket sales. That's it. And the second lowest in the Big Ten among the public schools was Rutgers at $9.2 million. Jeez. So, and another like 5.7 in basketball. If we want to compare Iowa, again, it's down again. And the number that always comes to my mind, Chad, is that the last time they sold $4 million worth of men's basketball season tickets was in 2005 fiscal year. So 20 years, they haven't even met what they did 20 years ago. And now they're at like 2.8 million. That's no bueno, as they say. So, and now this was Fran's last year. Yeah. And the attendance was the worst in 60 years. However, it's something that needs to change. Now, one thing that I highlighted a whole subsection on, whether it's Olympic sports, non-revenue generators, women's sports, that type of thing. And this was fascinating to me, was Iowa's ticket sales were down about revenue was down about $900,000 despite selling out the entire season. And from what I was told, it had to do mostly with resales that went sky high in Caitlin Clark's last year.
For the women. You're talking about for the women, yeah.
Yeah, for women, in the women's tickets area. So, and it still was like not quite 2.4 million. And so people have kind of wondered, why is it that Iowa women are losing money? Why aren't they making as much as the men? And there's multiple reasons for that. The ticket prices are not anywhere near the same. It's much more expensive to go to a men's game at Iowa than a women's game. And even if they could get a little more in women's, they have to straddle a line that you want to outprice the people that have really followed you for all these years. And if the interest kind of declines, what does that mean for then you get it back? Because you can be jerks about it, say we're going to double our ticket prices for the women, and then you finish 8th in the Big Ten and barely make the tournament, then people might just say, you know what, I'm not going to go anymore, and so they've got to carefully navigate that, but they still generated $4.8 million, but because there's no separate TV deal for women's sports. Yeah. And particularly women's basketball, even though their viewership numbers are really strong as compared to the men's, but they did lose the most out of any women's sport at Iowa.
Yeah, and it does cost a lot, and they have been financially committed to trying to maintain the Caitlin Clark era standard. Man, a lot of good information there, Scott. My question out of that is, what do Maryland and Rutgers even get out of being in the Big Ten at this point? And gosh, it just seems like if they join the Big Ten to make money, make more money, right? And they're just not doing it. It's just not been an impact, and it's hard to. They're certainly not benefiting the Big Ten big picture. They're not holding their 1/18th. They're not valuable to the Big Ten, frankly. Maryland basketball is even in the tank now. So, what's the point of having them in the Big Ten for both sides? What's the incentive here?
Yeah, I think you look. They're in there. They're lumped together because they came in together, but they're really two completely different pictures. Remember, Rutgers was in the American Athletic Conference. And when it came in, it had the revenue was so low in that league for media rights, because they were playing whatever night of the week they can get on, and they're playing against Tulane and teams like that. Well, maybe not back then, but anyway, that they even admitted it was like getting a lottery ticket to get to the Big Ten, and the state and the university thought that it was such a good move for the state and the university that they were willing to subsidize it beyond what they normally would, because they think, okay, for a Big Ten school, that adds a level of prestige, and then it helps it out. But when you're not winning games and you're not adding that kind of priority to what you've got, I think that you're kind of muddling along. And Rutgers really hasn't been able to take off. And it's kind of like when a couple years ago, I wrote with Stu Mandel that Rutgers was the worst move in realignment, and because of this drop, and this was before the $89 million losses the last 2 years, and I talked to former Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney for the story, and he's like, over the years they couldn't figure out if they wanted to be like Belmont or if they wanted to be, a Big Ten team, and I think that's kind of still the same case. Now, Maryland, it was pure financial. And because they were in the hole big time, to the point where their former Wallace Lowe, who was the provost at Iowa before he became the president at Maryland, he said, "Look, we don't know if we might have just dropped sport. Completely gone in the tank because they were so financially threadbare. But they've got to get in a position to where they're maximizing the major sports. Maryland basketball has a great tradition." Maryland football does not, and now you're looking at it going, you got to do something here, man. You can't just rely on getting an extra 10,000 fans when X Big Ten team comes to town. You got to build something for Maryland, and if you don't, the disparity is just going to continue to widen. And at some point, we don't know when, and I wouldn't project it, if there's ever an implosion. They are instantly on the have-not list. Right. Now they do a lot of great things in Olympic sports and academia. Fine. But this is about football, Chad. Yeah. It's always about football. So start getting people to the stadium.
Well, you mentioned the lottery, Scott. Have you ever wondered what your millionaire lifestyle would look like? You think about that while I tell folks about the Iowa Lottery's Millionaire for Life game, you could become a Millionaire. Look at that, a Millionaire. Top prize is a $1 million check a year for life. Second prize is $100,000 a year for life. And there are 9 different ways to win, and it is only $5 to play. Scratch, pick, pull, or play your way wherever you play the Iowa Lottery, Scott. Iowa Lottery. Pleased to have him on the show now. Pleased to have the Iowa Lottery.
Yes.
I would like to win $1 million. I don't know what that millionaire lifestyle. You're asking 2 journalists what. That's like asking Kirk Ferentz what a billionaire lifestyle would be like. You know what I mean? Like that's like unfathomable. Yeah.
Right. I think we could agree that Kirk's lifestyle would not change if he had $1 billion.
Yeah, that's true. He'd still like have 4 channels and like a small TV at the kitchen and.
I mean, he's making more money than he ever know what to do with, and he doesn't really care, you know.
Yeah.
I guess I would be sort of like that to some extent, but you know, not to that extent. But yeah, I'll tell you what, Chad, it's been interesting here at the combine. You know, it's been a busy couple of days. You know, got to see first couple of days dealt with the the coaches and GMs of the NFL teams, and then last 2 days now we've got players. We had defensive linemen and linebackers yesterday. Today, DBs and tight ends. Tomorrow, quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs. And then we finish up Saturday with the offensive line. Specialists were yesterday too. I didn't get to any of them, but I think probably for the Iowa audience is that you have. Yesterday, I was able to talk to Carson Shire and Max Llewellyn. And, among the questions I always ask most of the players, whether they're Iowa or otherwise, is kind of who's going to be the next guy in line to replace you. Because it's natural for us. They're on a stage where they can kind of brag about their friends or who's going to come up. And both of them were, Carson is a awesome young man, not necessarily the most vocal guy, but seemed to really like what Jaden Montgomery brought last year. Max Llewellyn raved about 4 or 5 guys. Kenny Merriweather, he called him his guy. Definitely Yosei Epineza, Chinecki. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Joseph Anderson. Talked them all up. Today, I talked to TJ Hall, who has no problem, or Xavier Wampa, who has no problem talking. And they were very high. First, both mentioned Zach Lutmer, as a guy who he'll be here next year. It's kind of what they said, even though he's got another year after that. But I think they're going to be right on that. And then there was, that they mentioned all the corners, and then Xavier's like, yeah, and they brought in some really good guys in the portal too. So we'll see how that ends up. But kind of and I'm not the only one who asked these questions. So somebody asked, a Penn State defensive tackle, Zane Durant, who I was talking to about Penn State stories. Even though I love Iowa State, but I do also write about the Big Ten and Penn State too from time to time. And so somebody asked him, who is the toughest guy he went against? He's like number 70 from Iowa, Bo Stevens.
There you go.
He's
I'm telling you guys.
Yeah, he was. He's like that whole line was really good. Really together. He was really physical, nasty, and tough. And if I recall, he didn't have a tackle that game. If he did, he had like one. So they were brutal against Penn State. Brutal in a physically grinded out way. So. There's a lot of shine here for the Iowa guys, and and a lot of the side discussions that I've had, and just that everybody sees somebody on this team as being a strong fit, and so I think that bodes well for them. I do, Mark Gronowski is a guy who's been talked up, even though he's not here, as this quarterback class is really weak, and he's a guy that people really started to like at the East-West Shrine game, and he brings a skill set that's rare, but also the way he threw at the East-West Shrine game really kind of opened some eyes, and of course his leadership and intangibles are off the charts, toughness and what have you. So, the modern day record basically is 6, and I think Iowa's I was in good position to get more. And of course, everybody still thinks that Aaron Graves is, should be here too. But Drew Stevens talked yesterday. I did not had a chance to talk to him. It's just there's like to kind of describe it. There are 8 podiums, and then there are like 3 side podiums. For like lesser known guys or just whatever. And a lot of times I got to make a Sophie's choice on where I go.
Right. Exactly.
And I mean, I've talked to like 30 guys here, so it's been pretty all over the place. So, but anyway, they some of the results are today. I know Carson said he semi-tweaked his hammy a little bit, but he's still going to run because he knows that's his deal. And TJ seems pretty excited, and he had a lot of formal informals. I can't remember all of them, because so many times guys ask that question. But I think he's, Falcons are on his radar, or they're on his radar, I should say. And Wampa's had, I think he told me a total of 20 teams. He met, whether it's the Hula Bowl or here. So, I think there's a mark for all of them. And in his case, and I'm just kind of rambling, but kind of dispensing information, he also he said that they've inquired about him playing like linebacker in sub packages and stuff like that, because of his hitting ability and so if he can make that transition, he might be a linebacker. He's got to bulk up probably another 20 pounds, but I think that might be his position at the next level to stay, because if you're a defensive back, you got to cover at an elite level, and he did a much better job down the stretch. I also think he's probably got another year to go to be really good there. And so, it could be really get involved there or bulk up and become a linebacker, special teamer this year and sub-package guy, and then kind of figure his spot out. And teams are smart. I mean, it's a sub-package world, so he can fit in a lot of different areas. But I think their prospects are all pretty good.
A lot of info there. Yeah, I agree. Wampa's got the frame where he could add some weight pretty easily. He's a tall guy, rangy guy. He's got those, natural athletic abilities, as we all know. Last thing, and I know we got to let everyone go here, but the Gronowski thing is so interesting to me because it does feel like in today's NFL, you can now carry 3 quarterbacks pretty harmlessly, right? And so could he be like a Taysom Hill type, where he's, if you could just plug him into Iowa next year, for example, like if you had a guy like that, you could just bring in on short yardage package situations where he could throw the ball too, and maybe make a deep throw. Wow, what a weapon that could be, not to mention his intangible qualities. It'll be interesting to see what type of team, desires that type of fit. It obviously isn't going to be a team probably going for a QB1, but no. It would be a depth building type thing, a culture building type thing. I'm very fascinated to see if Mark Gronowski gets drafted, and if not, what type of fit that he can find, because I do think there is definitely a possibility for him. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, let's take the team that we've followed for 50 years, Chad, and the Chicago Bears. If you're in the late rounds and he's available, you've got your quarterback. You don't want to deviate from that. You're not going to deviate from that unless there's an injury. So, but if you were to bring Mark Gronowski into the Bears, and it is just an example, but it's one that hits home for us, is that if you bring him in and he's QB2 if they trade Tyson Bagent, or 3 if he's active on a day, with a mind like Ben Johnson, you could put both of them in the backfield in red zone situations. You could have shotgun, offset right with Gronowski. You have, under the gun there. You could have a zone read thrower, or, things like that. Run option with the quarterback, but also have your main quarterback in there. So you've got 2 quarterbacks on the field, one that's built like a strong fullback running back who can throw, and the other is your quarterback. So it could keep teams on the guessing side of things. And in today's NFL world, things change so much, and there's so much creativity, and for a guy like Ben Johnson who's thrived on that, that's the type of thought you can do. I mean, in some ways, I would say his skill set is not unlike Jalen Hurts.
Right.
And a lot of people question Jalen Hurts getting drafted in the second round. He's probably a better passer, than Mark Gronowski, but not by much. And if and this quarterback class again is so much uncertainty. Other than number one. I mean, because it's like Ty Simpson. I saw him play against Indiana. Did not impress me.
No.
Is he more Jake Locker, or is he,
right.
or is he going to be a starter? We don't know. I mean, NFL, it's a 50% rate basically in the first round at quarterback. So Mark Gronowski, if you're the third or fourth round, even, hey, guy wins, guy competes his ass off. Everybody loves him. He's smarter than just about any quarterback in there, and you know what? Take a flyer. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're like, okay, bring Aaron Rodgers back one more year. Well, it wouldn't hurt to have this tough dude behind you, And anyway, But Caden Weegan also talks tomorrow. I'm anxious to see how he runs when he gets on Saturday, because I think he wowed a lot of people at the East West, and I think he's definitely will have a market for him, in my opinion.
All right, well, we appreciate you, Scott, jumping on from your Big 12 beat to come over to Legends and Listeners today. Enjoy the rest of your time in Indy, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks to Dominic Orange for making it worth my while as an Iowa State guy.
Chad Leistikow, Scott Dochterman, as always, on Thursday with Legends and Listeners, only on Iowa Everywhere.